It's where I make my drinks and my tiny potions and my tiny cocktails, but today it's just water. Would you like any? Oh, okay. Yeah, COVID. I think it's rude either way. So, you're better off. Okay. The Malleus Maleficarum, aka the Witch's Hammer, was written in 1486 and it comprised of about 256 pages. Yes, 56 pages. It was made only 35 years after the invention of the printing press, and there were 35,000 copies distributed that spanned the world, the Western world. So it went all the way from Iceland down to the Caribbean, from the gates of Moscow to the Americas. Like, this book reached, unfortunately. Unfortunate because this book wasn't any ordinary book, and it ended up changing the perception of what a witch was at this time. And before this book had been written, witchcraft and witches had to do with sorcery. So the conjuring of weather, the supernatural conjuring as well, the practice of herbal medicines with plants, natural medicine, herbal medicines, and this book turned it all around and into witches being satanic heretics, lusty women that would cavort with the devil and demons of their own free will in the hopes of helping Satan win his holy war against God in the fight for humanity. So, who wrote this book? Well, all 35,000 copies of these books credit two men, as the authors. First was Heinrich Kramer. He was a professor of theology at the University of Salzburg in Austria, as well as an inquisitor of the Tyrol region in Austria. And the other man was Jakob Springer. Jakob Springer was an esteemed professor at a prestigious university in Cologne, Germany. He was also one of the leaders of the Dominican monks in Germany at the time. Now, when it comes to the Malleus and its authors, there is a bit of controversy. So some historians believe that Jakob Springer only wrote the preface of the book. Others believe that he was a literary advisor, and even some believe that Kramer completely forged the name Springer just for credibility. They think this, I'm imagining, because the authors of the book is not the only point of contention when it comes to the Malleus Maleficarum. There is also something known as a Papal Bull within the pages of the Malleus. Now, a Papal Bull is a signed doctrine from the Pope, pretty much stating that whatever the bull was attached to was sanctioned by the church, was believed by the church, and in essence made the Malleus look blessed. And is one of the reasons, in big part, one of the reasons why it was so successful in its destruction. And for centuries, it appeared that the Malleus was legitimately sanctioned by the church, and they fully knew what was in the pages and believed it as well. But it has since come to be known that the Papal Bull, while it was legitimate, and this Papal Bull is one of the most notorious in history as well, while this Papal Bull was legitimate, it to proclaim that women were more susceptible because women were naturally more emotional than men and therefore couldn't control themselves, making them the perfect vessels for Satan and his work. And so, women became the targets. Kramer hated women. He was even quoted as saying, "We're living in an age of women, where women are running the show, where women's lust and carnalities are running the show." I very recently heard a man saying that this was a woman's world now, in all seriousness. I think it's ridiculous to say now, let alone 500 years ago when women were much more oppressed. People were much more oppressed in general, it sounded like, but particularly women. It's pretty apparent that because the Malleus has a sexual fixation and it was written by Kramer, he had some kind of sexual fixation. And in relevance to that, there have been letters found that spoke about Kramer and his conduct at his first witches' trial. It was a trial in Innsbruck, Germany or Austria. I believe Germany, might be Austria. But there were women that were accused, I believe women and a couple of men that had been accused of conjuring up this incredible hailstorm that had wrecked the place. And so these people were on trial for it. And Kramer, it said in these letters, his conduct was so creepy. He used to touch the women during his cross-examination randomly. He would focus and fixate on their sexual lives and sexually harass them. And it became so bad that the judge and the other lawyer pretty much threw the case out based on just shitty conduct and being a farce. That the trial was a farce, essentially. And this enraged Kramer, of course, but still, even after the failure of the trial, Kramer stayed. He stayed in Innsbruck and continued to badger and harass the women. And it got so bad that the bishop ended up having to chase him out of the city, calling him a madman in the meantime as well. So sacrifice unbaptized children, to have sex with succubi and incubi, demons, demon-like creatures, steal the semen of other men, transfection, also known as night riding, and I looked it up, but I couldn't find a clear-cut answer for that one. What I imagine is, I don't know, riding on broomsticks or something. And the last one is metamorphosis. And the last part is part 3. Part 3 is a discussion of what is supposed to be done and followed in the witch trials. Torture is also sanctioned as a means to procuring a confession. Torture was very popular, very upheld in this book. It even suggests that if you're not able to get a confession on the first night, go for a second, maybe even third day if necessary. That it even suggests torturing for a second and third day if necessary in order to guarantee a confession. Anything for the W. Lay and secular authorities are called upon to assist these inquisitors in whatever they may need in the extermination of these witches. Now, the Malleus ended up going through. The Malleus ended up going through 28 different editions from 1486 to 1600, and in those 1486 to 1600, I said 200 years earlier, maybe it was more like 150, 125. Anywho, for that amount of time that the Malleus was there, from 1486 to 1600, it was accepted by Roman Catholics and Protestants alike as an authoritative source of information on demonology and witches of the time. They also used it as a guide for Christian defense. So, that's what I know about the Malleus Maleficarum. A dangerous book written by a very sick man, given all the power. Let's talk about this for one sec. So, I do believe that we are in another cusp of an era or time very similar as to when the Malleus was written and distributed. So, while the printing press has been around for a long time now, the internet hasn't, but the internet has given the power, the voice, to anyone that's got Wi-Fi and a phone or has access to an app, an internet in an app. Like, some people should not have voices, let's just put it that way, but still, it's pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. Yeah. What? Oh, the torture. The torture. So, there were 3 that I came across that were like favorite torture, techniques of torture for these women and men that were on these trials. One of them was something called a skull crusher. It was a metal boring helmet, so I'm assuming that it was like a hat that you'd put on your head, and it's like you twist it and it gets tighter and tighter, crushing your skull. Another thing was vice grips, known as thumb screws. And there was also something called a strappado, and I think it concerns like hanging people up from their wrists or something. Not something I'd want to go through myself. Yeah. Oh man, I'm thirsty after that. Alright, well, that's all I have for you on the Malleus, but do you want me to draw a card for you before you go? first off, look at the bottom of the deck card. It's the Hermit, in case you can't read it, but like, these cards are gorgeous. Alright, so, tell me when to stop, okay? Okay. Alright, so you've got the 7 of coins. Perseverance, determination, and alignment. The 7 of coins often finds us when we are near completion of a journey. You've been working hard and getting things done, and this card asks you to check in and make sure everything's on the right track. This card lets you know that everything is going to pay off, but that doesn't mean there isn't still work to be done. Continue showing up for your long-term vision, and you will undoubtedly see it coming to fruition the way you want. Now is a good time to celebrate all the work you have put in. You have channeled your vision into reality. Be proud of yourself. Your steady determination will surely be rewarded. Have faith. Sounds like a good card. And if it's cool that you're working on and this is what it's talking about, keep going how you're going, boo. Alright. Do you have any interest in taking this pumpkin home? You do? Okay, here you go. Alright. Happy spooky season.